It sure has been a while. After a long hiatus, after finishing my short film, my master's thesis film, What Happened with Alain, I am back in the YouTube world, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for sticking with this break, with everything that I've been going through. Just trying to start a career of sorts in filmmaking. But I am here to celebrate the wonderful year of 2020, which was absolute garbage in many ways for everyone, for some more, for some less. But ironically enough, I think we got a wonderful year as far as filmmaking goes. So I'm happy to make this really long, probably two-parter video where I'm going to talk about my top 50 favorite films of 2020. And of course, before you start, but why is this film this low? Why don't you have this film on the list? Why is this so high? This is my personal opinion. Just be polite, accept that people have different opinions, don't be dicks, don't be overly defensive because I like less something that you love or I love something that you hate. Just let's be peaceful, let's have a peaceful conversation in the comments below. Please, absolutely please. Let's just get right into it, starting with the honorable mentions, which are a few, 10 honorable mentions. First up is Night in Paradise, a Korean action film, which I saw at the Venice Film Festival. Beastie Boys Story, a really wonderful documentary kind of stand-up event. Even though I'm not a big fan of the Beastie Boys, this really did hit me emotionally. The Rossellinis, another documentary about the gigantic family of the Rossellini and how much Roberto Rossellini has influenced the entire life of his family, making very high stakes. Emma, a film that I saw 2 years ago at the Venice Film Festival but came out last year. Really wonderful film, really erotic, really worth a watch. Lux Eterna, a short film by Gaspar Noé, kind of released but not read it, linked online if you're interested. The Predators, an Italian comedy, one of the best ones I've seen in a long time. We usually make a lot of garbage, very mediocre films, and this was easily one of the best ones I've seen in a long, long time. First Love by Takashi Miike, because we gotta give some love to Takashi Miike. The Three Deaths of Marisela Escobedo, which was heartbreaking and gut-wrenching to watch. Not a fun documentary at all, and it's on Netflix. The Wolf of Snow Hollow by the wonderfully talented Jim Cummings. One of the best takes on a werewolf that I've seen probably ever. It's a very niche subgenre of horror, but when something really good comes out of it, absolutely worth a watch. And last but not least, funnily enough, Birds of Prey. A lot of people shed on this film. I saw it only once in the cinema, but I had a blast with it. Not a perfect film or great or anything, but it was just so much fun. Didn't take itself so seriously, so why should people take it seriously? Just chill out, please. But yeah, now that we're done with it, let's jump right in to number 50. City Hall is the latest Frederick Wiseman gargantuan documentary. And this time he focuses on the City Hall and the administration of the city of Boston. It's 4 hours long, it's a long, long watch, but honestly, trust me, if you've seen any Frederick Wiseman film, you know it's going to be gripping, it's going to be fascinating, it's going to be very human, multi-layered, no narration, no expository dialogue whatsoever. You're just witnessing the lives of these government officials actually doing good work. You see how complicated everything is behind the scenes. You see just how much heart and passion some people put into trying to make the citizens' lives better. And it's a powerful message that we do need in 2020 and 2021, unfortunately. At number 49, it's Minari. Some people probably expected this to be way higher on this list. Minari is the critics' darling of this year, like everyone is loving Minari. I really, really enjoyed it. I think it's masterfully made. The texture of the film, the way it sounds, the way it looks, all of the performances are absolutely impeccable. I think. But the only real problem that I had that kept me from really finding it truly emotional, like some other people did, is that it's so quiet, it's so subdued, it avoids the classic drama and melodrama that could have easily been taken from the story of a Korean family immigrating to the US. And just, again, it's so quiet that I just couldn't get all that engaged into the narrative. And then at the end, it has a very, in my opinion, forced climax that, oh my god, this is going to shit and there's chaos. And it felt like it collided with the type of movie that he was going for. It either should have added a bit more melodrama, a bit more tension of some sort, because the tension is present, but it's too quiet, too subdued for me. But still, it's in the top 50 best of the year. I know there are some crazy fanboys who cannot accept some people not adoring this film, but I like it. I really do like it, and it's well worth a place in this list. At number 48 is Last and First Man, a pseudo sci-fi documentary, the only feature film that the late composer Jóni Jóhannsson has made, and it's brilliant stuff. The type of depressing, it almost feels like it's crazy. It reminded me of An Elephant Sitting Still, because it's the only feature of a filmmaker who died by suicide, and it just feels like you're reading an actual suicide note. It's depressing, it's dark, there's very little light, the result of darkness, loss of hope for the universe, for humanity. Just thinking about it is giving me chills, but honestly, it's not for everyone, but I do think it's well worth a watch, just to remember the composer. The score is one of the best ones of the year, and it showed a lot of promise that was sadly cut short. Depression is a bitch, it's not to be taken lightly, and I think hearing stories like this, watching films like this, shows just how darker the human psyche can go to really dark places, but also how we can come back from it, hopefully, in one way or another. At number 47 is Brandon Cronenberg's Possessor. And Possessor, I had to watch it again. It kind of felt like Mandy from a couple of years ago, where the first viewing, it just was hyped up beyond belief in a way that was kind of misleading of what the actual film was, which left me a bit disappointed. But watching it again, Possessor, what a ride. I got more engrossed into the sci-fi world that Brandon created. The gore, Jesus, in the uncut version, this film is nasty as fuck. Just to put it plainly, it's nasty, it's gruesome, it's gnarly, but it's not consistent, so don't go in expecting constant violence from beginning to end. When the violence happens, it hits hard, but it's very much a film that tries to explore themes of identity, of the self, of just literally putting other people's minds over our own, just trying to be someone we're not really, and losing our own self into this constant web of lies. I don't think it puts on a very consistent thesis. I don't even think there's really a big point to the film. I can kind of get it by thinking about it harder, but it's something that you really have to dig in a bad way, I think. But definitely worth a watch. And this also has Christopher Abbott, who I think is one of the most talented actors working today. He's constantly picking great projects, one after the other, and there's another one film with his that's higher up on the list. So. At number 46 is Abel Ferrara's Sporting Life, a documentary that I saw at the Venice Film Festival, and boy, this wrecked me. It started off, like the production of this film started off as kind of a Ferrara documenting his release and press for Siberia, and then the pandemic hit. Like we're talking about February 2020 at the Berlinale Film Festival, and then the pandemic hit, and it's a mixture of documentary, home movie, archival footage, intertwining the films of Ferrara and the darkness present in them with the pandemic, with American politics, and it's a mishmash of everything that I just loved. And it made me emotional in a couple of parts. But also, just to know, if you're going to be watching this once it's available, it's not amateurish quality, but it's very cheap. It's very digital, made with very low quality means, of course, so don't go in expecting anything particularly polished, but it's raw, it's emotional, it just hits you in the guts, and that's what's most important with art, for me at least. At number 45 is She Dies Tomorrow by Amy Seimetz. A bit of an art house curio from last year. Amy Seimetz is an incredibly talented actress and director. And this film came out in the best year possible, where it's just a depressing look at life and death, knowing that you're going to be dying tomorrow, this weird pandemic that's spreading through people, that's making them self-conscious about death. And it really does make you think about it, which is, sorry, kind of cliched in a way, where you have, got to drink. But it does make you think about just how much we take life for granted. We all think we're going to be invulnerable, invincible, we're never going to die, we're going to live forever. That's not true. 2020 made it clear for us, and She Dies Tomorrow fit into that narrative, unfortunately, very perfectly. At number 44 is Werner Herzog's latest documentary, Fireball. Fireball that examines the nature and the philosophical and the anthropological the consequences and the heritage and legacy of comets coming from outer space. It's a Werner Herzog documentary with Joshua Oppenheimer, which is a wonderful scientist. And there's so many wonderful, delightful moments in this film. Herzog goes back to Antarctica after many years since he made the Encounters at the End of the World. It's a joy. It's an absolute joy of a documentary. Life-affirming, fascinating. It sucks a little bit, bits and pieces here, but I love Herzog, and this is just one of his finest documentaries in recent years. At number 43, it's Disclosure, a Netflix documentary about trans people and trans people of color and their representation in media, mainly TV and film. And this is something that should have come way sooner. Again, something we take for granted, just how much cis white men are represented in media, and how little trans people are. And when they are, it's usually like prostitutes and someone that's ugly, or someone that's someone's lying about their true selves, messed up things like that. This is a wake-up call. It's a wake-up call to normalize this thing. Absolutely do that. And it's powerful. There's a lot of heartbreaking testimonies in this film, with a lot of wonderful people discussing about their transitions, how they've been treated by the media, how they've had to play some horrible roles in TV shows, and how things are changing in the last couple of years. We've seen a resurgence and a better outlook, better representation for these people. So absolutely well worth the watch if you're interested. At number 42, it's Sofia Coppola's latest, On the Rocks, starring Rashida Jones and Bill Murray. This was just comforting. It was just a warm blanket. I'm a fan of Sofia Coppola. I know she's kind of hit or miss for a lot of people, but she's a big hit for me. The constant feeling of ennui is kind of a cliche now when talking about her films, but it's true. Just people roaming, drifting through life, nothing really concrete happening, nothing really particularly exciting going on with them. And this one is a very poignant and sweet look at a daughter and the relationship with her father, older father, and all the regrets, all the mistakes he's made, all the regrets she's had, and just these generational differences, how the world of today has changed, and it's also about, yes, it's about feminism, it's about men being pigs, but also some men being just really good. Things have changed vastly over the years, and this is time for the old guard to retreat and leave more space to younger generations, hopefully for a brighter future. We can only hope. At number 41 is Tao the Generation. The Tao Project is this gargantuan but not really well-known multimedia project. It's an art exhibition, it's a series of films, there's some books out there as well. I've only seen 2 of the films of this series, and Tao the Generation is absolutely bonkers. Um, Very raw, very realistic. It's about human experiments. It's about people playing God. It's about submission, the control of human beings. It's about a lot of things. It's heavily philosophical, but it manages to blend both, those highly philosophical religious films, those talks of higher meanings, with almost mondo level of violence and horrifying content, especially in the bloody climax with actual killings of an animal. In full display, it's disgusting stuff, but it works in the context of the film, and especially I'm really thankful that in 2020 there are still filmmakers out there pushing the boundary of what's accepted on screen. Because more often than not, people just like, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. Most of the times for good reason, like killing animals. It's nasty, on screen at least, but it works. In this context, it works. And the whole DAO project is just fascinating. It's not entirely for me. That generation, though, really hit me. At number 40, it's a little known film from Netflix called Nobody Knows I'm Here. A very quiet and subdued drama of of a child musician who had a promising career, and then it just kind of faded into nothing for a very sad reason. And you follow now this child, now that he's 40 years old, and you see just how he's given up hope in a way. He still has this dream inside of him, but he's just kind of accepted life for what it is. And just talking about it, I was very skeptical watching this film for the first time, judged just by the premise alone, because it seems like you've already seen this film, right? But no, absolutely not. I think it's one of the more powerful indie dramas of the year. Really hit me in the feels. The central song of the film that gives it the title, I still think about it, which is more than I can say for many other films. And then the lead performance by Jorge Garcia, who was also in Lost, really underrated, really powerful, really strong. And yes, compared to something like Minari, this is the kind of quiet drama that really hits me in the feels and really worked for me. At number 39, it's St. Francis, another indie darling of the year, a bit lesser known than others, but well worth a watch. It was recommended to me by a good friend of mine, and it's such a delight. It's a very straightforward dramedy where this woman is having a relationship with a man, and she is babysitting this young girl, and just all the misadventures that happen. But it never becomes quirky. It never becomes, this haha, colorful, everyone's weird kind of dramatic comedy that we've seen many times before. It's much more grounded. It's much more straightforward. It talks about even important issues, especially the big theme of the film is abortion, and the way that that the filmmaker and the lead actress who actually wrote the film, the way they confront it, it's just blunt, as it should be. It's not romanticized. There's no big talks about bigger ideals. No, it's very matter of fact, and it's something that we need. We need to be more straightforward. We need to be more honest and more blunt about some things that are very important for many people in the world. And this one did it wonderfully, did it with a smile, and it gave me a big smile on my face. Number 38 is The Vast of Night, an incredibly surprising Amazon Prime original film. This harkens back to the Twilight Zone and sci-fi stories of old, but it does it in a way that's incredibly refreshing and modern. It's like a mixture of, yes, the Twilight Zone, but also the War of the Worlds radio drama. This has terrific cinematography, one of the best cinematographies of the year, in the way it has these long takes, everything's very polished, very clean. They've recreated 1950s rural America perfectly. The way it blends both visual storytelling with dialogue. I'm often one who prefers the images to do the talking, but this is one of those instances where actually the dialogue works. It works because not only is it wonderfully written, but it's also brilliantly performed by all of the actors in this. Especially an entire sequence with just a black screen where you're hearing someone talking on the radio. That's just a standout moment in this year. And And the climax of this film, they had a good budget for the ending. They probably spent a lot of time on the visual effects, but it was well worth it. At number 37 is Shirley by Josephine Decker. I was not a fan of Decker's first feature, or previous feature at least, Madeleine's Madeleine, but this one was really good. It's not your typical biopic about a writer. It's an almost surreal drama depicting this the famous writer Shirley Jackson, played by Elizabeth Moss, in a terrific performance, and their relationship with these two students who come to her house to kind of be tutored by her, and just the way to blend truth with fiction, the narrative of her stories, the dark places that she goes to with her mind, how her relationship with her husband, the relationship with the two guests that she has. It's an ambiguous film. It's very subdued. It's very typical, very much an art house flick, but very rewarding by the time it ends. It's one that I've been thinking about for a long time as well. Definitely needs a rewatch as well, but I highly recommend it. At number 36, it's The Nest, which is a family drama that almost has the atmosphere of a horror ghost story. It makes it much more captivating, much more engaging, much more compelling than most other films about a family who moves to another country and, they are not living well. It's not a trope, it's a starting point for many stories that we've seen before. But the way that it's approached here, especially in terms of direction, it just elevates it to insane levels. And Carrie Coon, I've always been a fan of her, especially in a short film called Great Choice. And here, she's absolutely wonderful, fantastic. Too bad the director had one too many metaphors, like very overt, clear metaphors in this film, because otherwise it would have been like way higher up, but still well worth a watch, and not many people have seen it or heard of it, so check it out. At number 35, we have Emma. Emma was just pure joy, pure bliss. 2020 was kind of the year for Anya Taylor-Joy, when she actually just broke into the mainstream with this, the New Mutants, and the Netflix show that's escaping my name, but everyone is seeing, Queen's Gambit. And honestly, Emma was just absolute joy to watch. Jane Austen adaptations are a bit of a soft spot for me, if done well. And this is just wonderfully made. The costumes, the colors, the performances, the humor, the nastiness of the main character. This doesn't shy away from showing that Emma is a bit of a dick towards everyone in her life. And the growth and changes that she goes through in the story. Just, again, pure joy. This came out when the pandemic was just feeling the worst. It came out on VOD in the beginning of March, I think. And watching it back then just gave me so much life and so much hopefulness for the future. And it shed a light in dark days. At number 34, we have the very enigmatic The Metamorphosis of Birds. One of the most atypical documentaries that I've seen, almost a docufiction in a way, where it blends reenactments of the life of the director when she was very little, very young, with actual testimonies and interviews with family members, with people who were alive at that time. And it's a blending of the two that is absolutely mesmerizing to watch. Truly a unique way to approach a documentary. It's not the only one that has tried something similar to this, but the execution is just pitch perfect. Not a particularly engaging watch, because it's very slow, with a lot of wide shots at extreme close-ups, just alternating constantly between the two, and a lot of narration, of exposition, of people just talking over it. But it works very well. If you have the patience and the time for it, I highly recommend this one. At number 33, we have another Elizabeth Moss film, and the last film that I saw in cinemas before they closed down, The Invisible Man. I absolutely adore the original story of The Invisible Man, and this remake, I think, was pretty great. In terms of the way that Lee Wanell approaches the horror of the narrative, twisting and changing the approach of the story. The Invisible Man is not the protagonist or someone we're following, he's the antagonist, he's actually invisible, he's an insidious presence. There is a lot of gaslighting going on in the film with Elizabeth Moss's character. And there's just a lot of shocking moments. Having seen a lot of thrillers and horrors in my life, for something to still actually surprise me and just deliver, like, oh, there's a moment halfway through, you've seen the film maybe, you know what I'm talking about, a moment halfway through where there's just a shocking moment that came out of nowhere and it left me shell-shocked, it almost felt like a dream, and the director conveyed it perfectly in the way of the sound, the entire picture by the way, the sound was just incredible. I'm so thankful I saw this in the cinema, with loudspeakers and the giant screen because no one was talking, especially during the opening. Just it loses a bit of steam in the end, but I still think it's one of the best horror films of the year, and just a wonderful experience to watch. Elizabeth Moss, she's so good and talented. At number 32 we have Borat subsequent movie film, something that should not have worked as well as it did, but thankfully we have it and it's glorious. I saw the first Borat film last year actually in preparation for this one, and that surprised me as well. I had way more fun than I ever anticipated. I was afraid it was just overhyped, people were selling it as something that it was not, but it was just an absolute joy and a fun watch. And in an era where America has become kind of a parody of itself, it's always been really exaggerated in many ways, but seeing it at its worst being made fun of in a way that there's still hope for the future of the United States, and shooting part of it during the pandemic, like they were filming it when the first cases of coronavirus were happening. Just incredible, just incredible way to adapt, change the story to suit the ever-changing situation in the world. It's so good, and the ending just made me emotional. It's heartfelt, it's heartwarming, which I was not expecting. The core-relationship between Borat and his daughter, just one of the best relationships in a film this year. At number 31, it's Notturno by Gianfranco Rosi. Very controversial documentary, but I am a sucker for poetic documentaries. You know, documentaries that aren't so much about telling a story with dialogue or whatever. They're just about the images, what those images give to you, what kind of emotions they make you feel. And Ross has kind of perfected it. And I think in Notturno, understandably so, it's very uncomfortable for a lot of people since it's set in Syria and Libya and other countries. It's never made clear where it's being shot, but I think it works to its benefit, the ambiguity of it all. And just seeing the decay, the life, the destruction that has happened in the Middle East, in an era where there's still conflict, where there's still fear. Shooting it must have been really hard, really dangerous. And the final result is one of the most cinematic films of the year. And thankfully saw this on the big screen at Venice. And just some parts of it, some images are unforgettable. Did he maybe push some boundaries a bit too far? Yes. But I think it ultimately worked. I think it did, and it's something that I haven't been able to forget over 5-6 months after seeing it. At number 30 we have Bad Education by Corey Finley. I think that unfortunately it's kind of been forgotten. It came out at the wrong time when the pandemic was hitting, where it was just a mess with new releases, VOD rushed, it was a mess. It was an absolute mess. But Bad Education, so good. Corey Finley's previous film, Thoroughbred, was an absolute surprise a couple of years ago. And this one keeps showing the immense talent that he has and promise for cinema. It's vibrant filmmaking that doesn't get in the way of the story. It has style and substance, and the layers of the narrative, the performances of this Hugh Jackman is fantastic, one of his best roles. It's just so good. It's just so good. And as someone who's always kind of like a bit iffy about watching films based on true stories, because more often than not they end up romanticizing or over-dramatizing them, this one does it in a way that just works. It works for the narrative, it works for the characters. And it was It was really, really good, really memorable, really good use of music as well. One thing I noticed in 2020, not a lot of great musical moments um, in films. There have been some, of course, there have been some dance sequences and whatnot, but not as many as usual, or not something that sticked out to me much. But this one had some great needle drops. At number 29, we have Chloe Zhao's Nomadland, another indie darling of the year. The Rider remains one of my absolute favorite films of all time. That's a proper docudrama that is just wonderfully made. And Nomadland is it's not as brilliant. My main problem with Nomadland that kept it from really adoring it is that there is actual fiction elements in it because it stars Frances McDormand and you also have David Strathairn in a secondary role. And I think that the moments where it becomes kind of like closer to the Rider, when it's more about actual people, their lives as nomads, someone who's sick and ill and on the verge of dying, just trying to find just going to the last wonderful places that she's seen in her life. There are so many tender, touching, truly human and genuine moments in this film that when it switches to the more fictional elements, I just felt the change in quality because it goes from great to good, and it doesn't merge well in my opinion. It's the only real problem that I have with it because otherwise it's just the way it's shot, the way it's been edited and put together. It's wonderful, wonderful film, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is the one that ends up winning Best Picture at the Oscars because it's been getting such a strong push even before it got released that it's in such a small year for American major releases. This is probably going to take the award, and deservedly so. I'm happy for Chloe Zhao getting more recognition before delivering probably a very mediocre MCU film. At number 28, we have The Disciple, which is an Indian film that's thankfully coming to Netflix really soon. And saw this at the Venice Film Festival last year. And let me tell you, as someone who is trying to be an artist, aspiring to become a filmmaker, a director who's already made some short films, this film just hit me a lot because it's about trying to pursue your dream, trying to make that into a career, but also trying to understand that you have some limitations, that maybe you just aren't good enough, maybe that's not what you're meant to be doing, and how some people, some things that you're looking up to, some inspirations or whatever, some idols even, how those people are just kind of liars, they're bringing you down, they're not motivating you in the right ways. There's just so many layers that I think if you have an artistic sensibility, if you are a failed artist, quote unquote, if you're someone who's starting out, if you're someone who's had a career, I think this is going to hit you in many, many ways. It's absolutely stunning film. With number 27, we have Some Children, or Khurshid, an Iranian film that tells the story of young children who are criminals or petty thieves, and how they discover that there is a treasure inside a school. So they get enrolled in this school and they try to start digging into the underground, into the basement of the school to find this supposed treasure. And I really, really loved this film, and even got the pleasure of meeting the director at the Venice Film Festival and talking to him about it. It was an absolute surprise of a film. There is a feeling of adventure that is missing from many releases nowadays. It was very enticing to me. Majid Majidi, the director, has always been a fan of showing how bad the upbringing for many Iranian children can be and has been. And he understands their hopes, he understands where they're coming from, and it gives them hope, it gives them a new future. And even in this film, just it was wonderful to see these children who didn't really have any idea of what to do with their lives outside of just being criminals. Um, how by going to school, by being more educated, by discovering new talents, how they see that there is hope for the future, that they maybe can become someone who is a real person, is not someone that people look down on. And I found it to be incredibly inspiring and emotional. The ending was wonderful. I know some people said it's kind of exploitative of children. I disagree. I can see some people finding it boring or not that interesting, but to me, it just hit me right in the feels, and it's something that I've been thinking about a lot. And I've said that, I know I've said that for many films so far, but it's true. If some films, maybe I like some films more in the moment, but then less over time. If something just stays in my mind, if I keep going back to it, if I remember it clearly, that's always a great sign for me, and that's why many of those films are on the list, and that's why Khorshid is at this spot. At number 26, we have Pieces of a Woman. Um, Many of you have probably considered it a 2021 release because it came out just recently on Netflix. And this film is a tough watch. I think the opening act alone, with an infamous 30-minute long take, that alone makes it one of the best films of the year. It's a standout sequence, the best opening of any film of 2020. But the rest of the film as well, it's not your typical story of grief. We have many expectations of, a woman, how she reacts to losing someone dear to her, and the man is the strong type. We've seen that in many films. But this one switches it around. It has the man being the weaker one, or the more emotional one, the one who's putting himself out there in a very desperate way. Well, the woman is the one who closes off into herself, who can feel everyone talking behind her back, judging her. It's incredibly powerful, and I know that it's definitely not going to appeal to everyone, because I've seen the reception has been very mixed about the film, but I do believe that it's definitely different from many other films of its type, and the performances are incredible for everyone. I think both Vanessa Kirby and Shia LaBeouf deliver some of the best work so far in this film. And Cornel Mundruzko, who directed the film, his use of metaphors outside of the final scene, the epilogue, that I found to be kind of unnecessary, in a way a bit too cheesy for its own good. But everything else, the way he uses visual metaphors of this bridge being built over time, over the 9 months, or 10 or a year or whatever, of the woman grieving, that's a terrific use of a visual representation of something. It's clear, some might say it's even on the nose, but it's there and it's hard to miss, and it works. At number 25, we have Relic, an Australian horror that's very much close to what I love about the genre. It's very similar to films like The Babadook and other more overtly metaphorical ones, and this one takes the premise of a woman with Alzheimer's who is slowly decaying, and how the forgetting is a monster, and how it affects and starts eating up at the lives of her daughters as well. It's destroying her mind, it's destroying her body, it's destroying her house. The house is actually reacting to the illness of this poor woman, and it's creepy, but it doesn't try to scare you. So if you're looking for cheap thrills or something like that, you're not gonna get them with Relic, because it's much more nuanced. It's much more, some may say even negatively so. It's too much about its themes and metaphors and whatever. But I think that works. I think that's the beauty of the horror genre, just taking a premise, taking something that's a real fear, the fear of growing old, of forgetting who you are, who the people around you are, just being lost in distant memories and not being aware of the present. It takes that very, very real fear and very real problem and just elevates it to new heights, delivering one of my favorite endings of the year. Unconventional, unexpected, it's surprising, it's shocking to some, but I love that one. At number 24, we have On the Record, which is a documentary about the Me Too movement and the music industry. The main thing that differentiated this between other documentaries talking about the Me Too movement is that this one was shot while it was happening. You just see how much fear there is from these women about coming out and telling the truth about what happened, owning the rage and the abuse that they've suffered in the hopes to actually bring some justice into this world. It's tragic, it's horrifying in parts, but it's also necessary. This film, these stories, and so many others deserve to be told, and it was absolutely just heartbreaking to see. At number 23, it's another documentary, less heartbreaking but still kind of surprising. Feels good, man. It's a documentary about Pepe the Frog, and just saying that you don't know what you're gonna be getting. And this was wonderful. This was one of the best documentaries of the year, which I was not expecting because it's not so much about the history of Pepe the Frog as a cartoon character, a comic book character, and then as a meme, but the way this meme was weaponized by the alt-right, how Pepe was used to promote Trump during his campaign. There's a lot of insane things that I didn't know and didn't remember from back in 2016. And as much as, and the way the narrative is told is very cinematic because you have the beginning, you have the middle, you have the low point, and you have the comeback. And then seeing the creator of Pepe just coming back, trying to promote him as a figure of love and acceptance instead of something that was used for hate. It's inspiring. It's inspiring and it's wonderfully made. And there's some wonderful and just beautifully constructed animated sequences in this. They are well worth the watch alone. And yeah, just beams are dangerous, people. Beams can be hella dangerous. At number 22, we have Lovers Rock, part of the Small Axe anthology films by Steve McQueen. It's London, it's one night in the 80s, and you see how people of color, black people, meet together to have a party in secret, which is something that they couldn't really do and really advertise. And you just see humanity, you see bodies colliding, you see romance blossom, you see some negativity, some bad things, a lot of the nastiness of the world. So much of the anthology is about discrimination and race, and well, this one superficially could be seen as more as not being about that. You have a constant feeling and reminder of something bad going on in the background. You can just feel it inside of you. You can see the police roaming around the neighborhood. Some of the sequences in the light, in the opening and closing. There's this constant unease, but also the need to block all of that away, to just stop focusing and caring about the troubles of your everyday life and just letting go for one night. And in a year where we haven't been able to meet and touch other people, so just watching this, it's gives you chills, gives you big chills. At number 21, it's Charlie Kaufman's I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Just wonderful film. I think Charlie Kaufman is one of my favorite directors, favorite screenwriters. I will say that this is his weakest film for me, personally at least, because it's a bit too self-indulgent for its own good. And I initially loved it way more, but then it just became a bit too full of itself. The basic narrative, the basic story of this film, the ambiguity, the surrealism, the heightened sequences in this, the ending is wonderful. The dialogue between Jesse Plemons and Jesse Buckley, it's incredible. There's just so many wonderful layers to deconstruct in this. But then it has those weird moments where it just goes full on reference, and if you don't get it, then you're just an ignorant ass. Or you have to read up on the IMDb trivia or Wikipedia synopsis or whatever for people who actually got those. Charlie Kaufman has always had a lot of references to other things. This one is too overt about it. It alienates people more than including them into the story. But if you manage to, if I took that more personally, probably would be lower on the list, not even on the list. But I could look past that, and there's just so many wonderful moments in this film. It's just a tragic story. When you look at it, when you understand some of the twists and turns that it takes, and it's depressing. It's depressing with just a little bit of hope at the end, just like most Charlie Kaufman films. I hope the man manages to find some peace before it's too late. Fingers crossed. At number 20, it's another Small Axe film. This time it's Red, White, and Blue, starring John Boyega. And this one tackles racism inside the police force. One of the first black officers in London. The amount of discrimination that he's been subject to. How he is not being treated as an equal by his peers, by his commanding officers. It's frustrating to watch. It's tiring. there's so much rage. You can feel it in all of those films, especially one that I'll be talking about later on. There's just so much rage there. And Boyega's performance is revelatory. I think and hope that he's going to have a wonderful career now that he's done with Star Wars and can focus on bigger projects. Because this Detroit, he's shown immense talent, immense range. And I love that there are so many real stories in this collection, in this anthology, because they need to be told. And seeing different facets of racism, especially in Britain, which we're always talking about the United States, but this is happening in other countries as well. And having McQueen actually point back to his home country, to his own home, like he was born in London, and he's witnessed those things firsthand when he was younger. So you can feel that it's palpable, and I'm just glad this anthology exists. It was one of the best things to come out of freaking 2020. At number 19, it's a Polish film, Never Gonna Snow Again. Still not available. I saw this in Venice. It's come out in a couple countries here and there. It's the pandemic, unfortunately. But this, it's the first film that I've loved from the director, whose name is Małgorzata Smolska. Butchered it, of course, but I really love this one. It's another one that has stayed with me far longer than many others I enjoyed more on the first viewing. It's a film that's kind of similarly to The Nest. It has the atmosphere of a horror film. You're always kind of expecting something really bad, really insidious to happen, but then it doesn't. It's about a community of people where a new Russian masseuser comes to, and you see him socializing with them, you see him helping them out, and he has some hidden power maybe given to him by the Chernobyl disaster, and he helps them. He helps this community. He helps these people get better, improve their lives. It was very touching, very funny as well. There's a lot of wonderful humor in this, but so different from what I was expecting from when it began. It's, again, like similarly to other movies that have come out in 2020, it felt more relevant than if it came out in any other year. Just this coming together, these people, of finding peace in themselves, with regrets, with mistakes, with repressions that they might have. It was wonderful. I'm so looking forward to watching this again. I absolutely loved it. At number 18, it's Pixar's Soul. You've probably already seen this film because everyone has, because of course we love Pixar. I'm not the biggest fan of Pixar recently, of animated mainstream films in general, but Soul really hit me. Again, just there's so many recurring themes in this video. The fear of death, the fear of letting go, the fear of not having been following your dreams in the right way. What is passion? What are your motivations through life? It's just, there's so many wonderful themes that are tackled in this film in a very poignant and very human way. This harkens back also to a lot of classics, especially a Pavel and Pressburger film, A Matter of Life and Death, which is an absolute masterpiece, maybe my favorite of theirs. But this one takes a lot of prompts from it and tells an equally powerful tale about life, about not giving up, about just enjoying the little things that we have. We're always trying to achieve the next goal and being better than everyone and, following your dreams or whatever. And then we're just old and we die and we haven't done anything. And what was the point of it? The point of life is life. It's living. And it's a wonderful message. A message that's gonna hit adults far more than children. And that's for the better, honestly. At number 17, it's another Abel Ferrara film. It's Siberia. And Siberia, I watched it right before starting to write a new draft for my short film. And this is what I needed. It's the artistic shot in the arm that just keeps me going. It's an inventive, partly autobiographical, like most of Ferrara's recent output, very surreal, weird film with a wonderful performance by Willem Dafoe, a descent into a personal hell, a personal underworld. and it's just terrific stuff. Honestly, it's it's just there's so many sequences that have stuck with me, from Talking Dead Animals to Willem Dafoe just jamming and dancing, and it's an Abel Ferrara film. It's best explored and witnessed for your own rather than explained by me. Unconventional, bizarre, and 100% Ferrara. And number 16 is the Amazon Prime documentary Time. Time, which is something that felt and still feels interminable during lockdown, during quarantine, during staying inside your home. And it's something that felt equally as long for the protagonist of this story, whose husband was incarcerated and she had to raise their children alone for a long, long time. And the amount of footage that she shot during her life, just seeing, you see these children grow, you see her grow, you see her change, you see how she was when she was younger, when she first met her husband, the love of her life. You see time moving forward, time moving backwards, memories lingering in her mind. It's powerful cinema. It's one of the most moving documentaries I've seen in a long time. Maybe the most moving documentary of 2020. And it's the final minutes of this, the climax, the ending, or whatever you want to call it. It's so touching. It had me bawling my eyes out. Again, it's on Prime. Please do watch this. It's been getting a lot of acclaim, but it needs more. It needs more recognition. It needs to be seen by more people. It's just wonderful. At number 15, we have The Five Bloods, Spike Lee joined. And I'm a big fan of Spike Lee's work. And the best thing about The Five Bloods is that you could absolutely destroy this film for the way it is put together, just like all of Spike Lee's oeuvre. But that's the beauty of it. He makes wonderfully messy films. And this one is no different. It has terrific performances across the board, especially Delroy Lindo, maybe a career finest performance. The way he writes his characters, they're very complex, they're very unlikable in ways, but he doesn't care, and then you end up caring for them. Chadwick Boseman, in one of his last roles, this came at the right and wrong time, and it's more so than Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. This had a big impact on me, and I'm still thinking about his performance and his final scene in this movie. It's incredibly moving, incredibly powerful, especially since it's a Vietnam War film that's set in modern times with flashbacks to the Vietnam War, which is incredible because the older actors play their younger selves without makeup or anything. It's just playing themselves. I think that was a great choice. You can still feel how these men are still lost in the battlefield. They still haven't left Vietnam really, even in their memories, and it's a great film. At number 13, we have Black Bear, which is a bit of a meta film. I won't be spoiling much about it because it's one that's best experienced for your own, but it is one of the best examples of how reality influences fiction and how fiction influences reality. There's a lot of ambiguity. It's a film of two halves where you don't really know what is the actual reality of everything. I have my own theory about it, but it's a wonderful film, one that has stuck with me for a long time. And Aubrey Plaza, Christopher Abbott, and Sarah Gadon, all three do a terrific job, but Plaza especially, I've always been a fan of hers, and here she just blew me away. Her best performance, and I'm so excited to see her in more movies in the future. At number 13, we have The Assistant. If you've ever wondered how someone like Harvey Weinstein managed to get away with abuse, with rape in the film industry, even with people knowing full well what was going on, watch The Assistant. It's a fiction film, but it makes it incredibly clear just how much these lies are perpetuated, how much the abuse is treated as normal in the industry, and how people are just desensitized by what's going on around them in order to survive and in order to keep their jobs. It's scary, it's very slow, deliberately paced, so don't expect anything exciting or full of drama like Bombshell, but I was moved and really creeped out by this, and Julia Garner, she's so good and talented. At number 12, we have the 40-year-old version, written, directed, and starring Radha Blank. It's a film that's clearly personal for her, semi-autobiographical. It's about a theater screenwriter who is teaching to troubled teens, and she wants to become a rapper. It's such a funny film, but there's also so much anger. You can tell that Radha Blank has been subject to a lot of discrimination, to a lot of rejections by her peers. And that comes through clear as day in this film. And it's just, it's so good. It's a bit too long maybe for its own good, but I could have watched like 3 hours of her just talking with different people and with her friend. And yes, I love this one, if you can tell. It's on Netflix too. It's a Netflix original. It premiered at Sundance and it's got acclaim there. Then it got dumped on Netflix and forgotten, but not by me. At number 11, we have a much darker film, New Order by Michel Franco, which is, some people compared it to Parasite just based on the premise alone, which is a horrible mistake. This is not about poor people infiltrating rich people's house and that's it. This is a very depressing dystopian future film where the government is literally weaponizing the masses and the poor for an uprising to get more control over the people in the country of Mexico in that case. And it's disturbing. The violence is hard when it happens. It's bleak as hell. By the time this ends, you have no hope, you have no light, you have no joy in your heart. It's upsetting, and it's brilliant. And I love how the festival reception has been very mixed because it's not an easy watch. It's not an easy watch. And while some are definitely gonna hate it because of how dark it gets, I loved it. And we're finally down to the last 10, starting with Dick Johnson is Dead, another Netflix documentary. I was a big fan of the previous film of Kirsten Johnson, Camera Person, and in this one, it shows the cathartic power of filmmaking, of how it can lead us, hopefully, maybe, to prepare ourselves for the worst. In this case, death of her father. Her father is old, she loves her father, she already lost her mother due to terrible illness, and she's trying to get ready this time around, get ready for the grief, get ready to remember and immortalize her father forever. And it's one of the most touching films of the year. There's some wonderful, funny sequences in this. Dick Johnson is quite a character, but when this ends, no, it's great. It's unforgettable. The ending just had me breaking down. The whole film, it's one of the biggest and best explorations of grief in real life that I've ever witnessed. At number 9, we have Family Romance, LLC, by Werner Herzog. Part documentary, part fiction, where it's similar to The Rider, where actual people are playing a fictional version of themselves. But this one, more so than other films, just made it clear how alienated and separated we are getting from reality and from the people around us, to the point where you have an actual agency where people can just rent other persons. Someone can pretend to be your father, someone can pretend to be your lover. It's insane that it's something that feels so Japanese, but in reality it could easily happen in any other place in the world. Human interactions are fewer and fewer, and there's a wonderful race note moment in the film that encapsulates everything, where you have an aquarium with fake fish floating around, and that's, yes, what's real anymore? What relationships are real? And the way this is actually affecting the protagonist, the actual owner and creator of Family Romance, whether it's all fictional, whether part of it is true, you can feel the alienation, you can feel the loss of identity of the self. one of the absolute best fiction films Herzog has ever made. It's a shame that it's kind of been forgotten and not seen enough. Wonderful film. At number 8, we have another animated film, Wolf Walkers. This was glorious. Some of the best hand-drawn animation I've ever seen. And it's not just that, like, this feels like a proper film from the story, the structure of it all, the dialogue between the characters, the way it evolves, the way it plays with your emotions and expectations, and the way this uses proper cinematic techniques inside of it, from the wide shot to the detail to the extreme close-up to the changing of the aspect ratio. There's so many wonderful shots in this film, and the music, it's moving. It's one of the best soundtracks of the year, and the voice acting, terrific. Even if the lead girl is supposed to be British and she has an Irish accent, but whatever. But it's a wonderful film. I don't want to say anything about the story because you can just look it up yourself for this one. Just watch it. It's an Apple Plus TV, whatever, original. But trust me, it's. I'd rather see this win over Soul. Soul is going to win every award because it's Pixar, but Wolf Walkers just moved in me so much. So much, more than many other actual films have, and this was a 2D animated one from Ireland, so it's incredible. At number 7, we have Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. I think I talked about this earlier this year, but whew, what a ride. A very quiet, again, this has been the year of quiet, subdued dramas, some hit more than others, but this one just hit me right in the feels, where a young girl has to go with a friend to New York to get an abortion, and it's literally just witnessing their journey together. And this is raw, this is delicate, this is taken seriously in the best way possible. This one feels like it comes from a very personal place in ways that very few films ever do. And I was spellbound by it, and I've only seen it once because I cannot bring myself to watch it again, because it's not graphic film. There's no drama or any bullshit like that, but it's again, like other films I've talked about, but even more so with this one. It's a story that needed to be told, and it's. I hope it's the good beginning for the director and the actors, and I forgot the names. Big shame on me. Eliza Hittman, yes. Eliza Hittman. I want to see more of her. She has a wonderful voice. She manages to make something that's grounded and cinematic at the same time. I want more. I want more. Give her all the money to make any drama she wants. At number 6, we have the Macaluso sisters, which is an Italian film. You've not heard of it, you haven't even seen it, which is perfectly fine, but I wanted to let more people know about its existence. But it's an adaptation of a play by Emma Dante, who also directed this. And we got many play adaptations last year, which were good, like One Night in Miami, Marines Black Bottom, but they felt very theatrical, like slaves to the source material. And this one is a proper film. This just blew me away when I watched it at Venice. It was my favorite film of the festival this year. It was full of tender moments. It was wonderfully shot, wonderfully performed, some of the best needle drops and musical moments of the year, and it was absolutely heartbreaking. Seeing these sisters, their lives through many decades, seeing them young and then seeing them grow old, grow apart, get back together, grieving together when one of them has an unfortunate accident. It's just thinking about it, I'm getting goosebumps. I loved it, and it's a shame that it probably won't be available for a long time. I think it's coming out on DVD like next month or something like that. But if it ever becomes available internationally, absolutely do watch it and check it out, because it's a wonderful filmmaking. Number 5, we have The Sound of Metal. Everyone has talked about Riz Ahmed and how his performance is fantastic at this, and it is. But well, it's probably the best three-act structure of the year. It's like very clearly delineated. It's in the first act you witness this man, this drummer who is losing his hearing, and how he's trying to come to grips with it, and with the constant loss of his hearing, which is a big fear of mine, big fear of mine. In the second act, you see him go to a community center with deaf people, how they live their lives, how they communicate with each other, and that feels very documentary-esque. Most likely, a lot of them are actual deaf people, and it's wonderful, absolutely wonderful to see them together, to see him grow as a person, grow as a human, while also clinging too much to what he has and not accepting what's inevitable, pretty much. And then in the third act, you see him, in the world again, and you see how much he has changed and how much the world has changed for him. And it's it's a wonderful film. It's an absolutely wonderful film, and just good, just great. There's nothing else to add. At number 4, we have my favorite film from the Small Axe series, which is Mangrove, the first one. We had the trial of Chicago 7 this year as well, which talked about another famous trial. This one is about in the UK, Mangrove. Well, the trial of the Chicago 7 was in Chicago, the US, similar time period as well, but well, that one was overly dramatic, cheesy, full of one-liners. Everyone's so clever and everyone's talking like Aaron Sorkins would, which is annoying after a while. This one felt genuine. This one was raw. This one had you frustrated. This one had you with your fists up in the air. It showed the injustice in a way that just felt much more powerful than many other films who try to be like this. And it's just a brilliant ensemble cast. It has some of the best courtroom drama sequences that I've seen. And yes, if you haven't seen it, watch this. You're gonna rethink Trial of Chicago 7 afterwards, trust me. That one is a good film. I know some people really love it. It's a good film. But this one just blows it out of the water for me. And now we're down to the last 3 films of the list. And they're always interchangeable, as you know, more often than not, the last 3, but I'm just gonna talk about them one after the other. No best or least best among them, but first up is David Byrne's American Utopia. Just again, in a year that was so dark, having David Byrne, his music, his songs of hope, songs for a better future of the US and of the world, of acceptance, of friendship and fraternity, it moved me. It moved me to tears. And it never fails, listening to this music and listening to these songs and watching these tracks never fails to give me joy and hope for the future. So yes, this was the feel-good film for the year for me. And the second one, favorite of the year, was Another Round by Thomas Winterberg. Mads Mikkelsen, immense performance in this one. So much power in this film. I love films about friendship, about men sticking together. And in this one, they stay together to try and test out how much they can go on being drunk and how it can improve their lives. And turns out at first there are some positives, but in the end it's just shit, it's just negatives. And it's about, yes, the constant fluctuating cycle of life, the circle of life, or whatever you want to call it. You're always going to have highs, you're always going to have lows. You have to try to be yourself, your best self. Be true to yourself and to the others around you. And the ending is the best ending of the year, bar none. Absolutely wonderful and unforgettable dance sequence. And last but not least, Promising Young Woman. One of the most important and relevant films of 2020. Film about abuse, a film about rape, and it's not your typical rape and revenge film, because those are often gory and violent and whatever. This one knows that the best revenge is a dish served cold. And boy, this is stylish, this is emotional, this is shocking, this is never violent or gory, so there's no blood, so don't worry about that. But it's the film that we need right now. It's the film that shows that there's a change, a change in filmmaking, a change in stories being told, and hopefully a change in society as a whole. For men, for women, absolutely a must watch. I would say probably the most important film to come out of 2020 for Western societies at least. And Carey Mulligan, mwah, perfect in this film. So guys and girls, there you have it. This was my really long video about my top 50 favorite films of 2020. Again, my personal list, yours is likely gonna be different. Let me know in a very civil way in the comments below what you agree with, what you disagree with, and what some of your favorite films of the year were. I'll try and be more active in this 2021. I have more time now on my hands, so I'll try to make more interesting videos, less just me talking into the camera reviews, but more video essays and stuff like that. Wishful thinking? Maybe, but we'll see. As always guys, thanks for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.